The champagne glass slipped from Emma's fingers, shattering across the polished marble floor of the grand oakwood ballroom. 200 guests turned to look, but she barely noticed. Her eyes were locked on the woman standing in the doorway, a woman in a modest blue dress holding the hand of a little boy who had Michael's exact same dimpled smile. If you've ever felt like your entire world collapsed in a single moment, stay with me until the end of this story. It will change how you see trust, love, and the courage it takes to rebuild your life. And if you're new here, please hit that like button and subscribe. Your support means everything as we share these powerful, real-life stories together. The morning of Emma's wedding had begun like a fairy tale. Sunlight streamed through the windows of the bridal suite as her best friend Rachel carefully pinned the delicate veil into her dark hair. Emma stared at her reflection, hardly recognizing the radiant woman looking back. After 3 years of dating Michael Harrison, she was finally becoming his wife. "You're glowing," Rachel said, her eyes misting. "I've never seen you this happy." Emma smiled, thinking about how Michael had proposed 6 months earlier on the beach, where they'd had their first date. He'd been nervous, stumbling over his words in that endearing way that made her love him more. He wasn't smooth or perfect, but he was hers. He was steady, reliable, and after a string of failed relationships, Emma had finally found someone who felt like home. "I can't believe this is really happening," Emma whispered, touching the pearl necklace her late mother had worn at her own wedding. "Mom would have loved him." Rachel squeezed her shoulder. "She would have. He's one of the good ones, Em." Emma had lost her mother to cancer 2 years earlier, and the grief had nearly broken her. Michael had been there through every tear, every sleepless night, every moment when the world felt too heavy. He'd held her when she couldn't stand, made her laugh when she'd forgotten how, and slowly helped her remember that life could still be beautiful. That's when she knew he was the one. The ceremony had been perfect. Emma walked down the aisle to a string quartet playing her favorite song, and when she reached Michael at the altar, his eyes were wet with tears. His hands trembled as he held hers. "I promise to love you forever," he'd said during his vows, his voice breaking. "You're my everything, Emma, my whole world." She'd believed every word. The reception was in full swing by 7 o'clock. The ballroom was transformed into a wonderland of twinkling lights and white roses, Emma's favorite flower. They'd shared their first dance to The Way You Look Tonight. And Michael had whispered in her ear, "This is the happiest day of my life." Emma had been making her rounds, thanking guests and accepting congratulations, when she noticed Michael's phone buzzing repeatedly on the head table. She picked it up absently, seeing numerous missed calls from an unknown number. Then a text appeared. "I'm outside. We need to talk. It's about Sophie and James." Emma's brow furrowed. Sophie and James? She didn't know anyone by those names. Another text came through. "Please, Michael, your son is asking for you." Her blood ran cold. "Your son?" Emma looked across the ballroom where Michael was laughing with his college friends, his tie loosened, his face flushed with champagne and joy. She walked toward him, phone in hand, her heart beginning to pound. But before she could reach him, there was a commotion at the entrance. The doors opened, and that's when Emma saw her, the woman in the blue dress. She was perhaps 30, with tired eyes and shoulder-length brown hair. The little boy beside her couldn't have been more than 5 years old. He had Michael's dark curls, Michael's nose, Michael's unmistakable dimples. The woman's eyes scanned the crowd desperately until they landed on Michael. "Michael, she," called out, her voice cutting through the music. The entire ballroom fell silent. Michael turned, and Emma watched the color drain completely from his face. It was a look of pure terror, of a man whose worst nightmare had just materialized. He stumbled backward, nearly knocking over a chair. That's when Emma's champagne glass fell. "Who is that?" Emma heard herself ask, though her voice sounded far away. Michael opened his mouth, but no words came out. The woman walked forward, and the little boy said loudly, "Daddy, you promised you'd come to my birthday party." The word "Daddy" echoed in Emma's ears like a gunshot. Rachel appeared at Emma's side, gripping her arm. "Emma, maybe we should go somewhere private." But Emma couldn't move. She watched as Michael finally found his voice. "Sophie, what are you doing here? What am I doing here?" The woman, Sophie, laughed bitterly. "What am I doing here? You've been ignoring my calls for 2 days, Michael, 2 days. And then I see on Facebook that you're getting married. Married? Were you ever going to tell us? Were you ever going to tell your wife about your son?" The ballroom erupted in gasps and whispers. Emma felt like she was drowning, like the air had turned to water. "This isn't what it looks like," Michael said, moving toward Emma with his hands raised. "Emma, please, let me explain. You have a son?" Emma's voice was hollow. "You have a child?" "Mommy, I'm confused," the little boy said, looking up at Sophie. "Why is Daddy wearing fancy clothes? Is this a party?" Emma's legs gave out, and Rachel caught her, guiding her into a chair. Michael's father, a stern man Emma had always found intimidating, stormed forward. "Michael James Harrison, what in God's name is going on?" Sophie's eyes welled with tears. "I'm sorry to do this here. I really am. But you left me no choice. You said you were working out of town for business. You said you'd be back by James's birthday. But you weren't working, were you? You were here, marrying someone else." "How long?" Emma finally asked, her voice surprisingly steady. "How long have you had a family?" Michael's face crumpled. "Emma, please." "How long?" "6 years," Sophie answered when Michael couldn't. "We've been together for 6 years. James is 5. We live in Riverside, about 40 minutes from here. Michael told me he travels for work. He's with us 3, maybe 4 days a week. The rest of the time he said he was working on projects in the city." Emma did the math in her head. 6 years. She'd been with Michael for 3, which meant for their entire relationship he'd had another family, another life, another woman waiting for him at home, a child calling him daddy. "I never meant for this to happen," Michael said desperately. "I love you, Emma. I really do love you." "You love her?" Sophie's voice rose. "You told me you loved me. You told me we'd get married once your business was more stable. You said we'd buy a house together. What about all those promises, Michael?" Emma's father, who had walked her down the aisle just hours ago, approached with a look of barely controlled rage. "You need to leave, son. Now." "Mr. Carter, please, I can explain." "There's nothing to explain," Emma said, standing up on shaking legs. She pulled off her wedding ring and held it out. "Here, give it to her. She probably needs it more than I do." "Emma, no, please." Michael reached for her, but her father stepped between them. "I said leave," her father growled. "Before I forget we're in public." Emma turned to Sophie, who looked mortified, her face red with humiliation and tears. "I'm so sorry," Sophie whispered. "I had no idea about you until yesterday. I found a wedding invitation in his jacket pocket. I thought maybe it was for a friend, but then I saw both your names on it. I confronted him, and he said it was complicated, that he'd explain everything. Then he disappeared. I couldn't reach him. I was so worried and then so angry, and I had to know the truth. I had to see it for myself." Emma looked at this woman, this stranger who'd been living a parallel life to her own. Sophie wasn't a villain. She was a victim, just like Emma. They'd both been betrayed by the same man. "How did you meet him?" Emma asked quietly. "At a coffee shop 6 years ago. He said he was a consultant who traveled a lot for work. We dated for a year before I got pregnant. He promised he'd be there for us, and he was, mostly. He has an apartment in Riverside, and he'd come stay with us several days a week. I thought he was just a dedicated worker. I never suspected that he had a whole other life," Emma finished. The guests were frozen, watching this nightmare unfold. Emma's Aunt Linda was crying. Michael's brother looked shocked and disgusted. Rachel held Emma's hand so tightly it hurt. "I should go," Sophie said, gathering James into her arms. The boy was crying now, confused by the tension and his mother's tears. "I'm sorry I ruined your wedding. I just needed answers." "Wait," Emma said. She walked over to the gift table and picked up an envelope that had been sitting there all evening. It was from Michael's grandmother, and Emma knew it contained a generous check for their honeymoon. She walked back and pressed it into Sophie's hands. For James, for his birthday that his father missed. Sophie stared at the envelope, then at Emma, fresh tears spilling down her cheeks. "I can't take this. Please," Emma said. "None of this is his fault. Happy birthday, James." The little boy peeked out from behind his mother's shoulder, his dimpled smile emerging despite his tears. "Thank you," he said shyly. As Sophie left with James, Emma turned to Michael one final time. He looked destroyed, tears streaming down his face, reaching out for her. "I'm sorry," he sobbed. "I'm so sorry. I never meant to hurt anyone. It just happened. And then I didn't know how to fix it, and I thought I could make it work. Thought you could have everything," Emma said coldly. "2 women, 2 lives, 2 families. Did you think about me at all? About her? About your son?" Every day, Michael whispered. I thought about all of you every single day. I hated myself for it, but I couldn't lose any of you. I love you, Emma. I really do. That's not love, Emma said. Love doesn't lie. Love doesn't deceive. Love doesn't make promises it never intends to keep. What you did, that's not love. That's selfishness. That's cowardice. She turned to the stunned crowd. I'm sorry, everyone. The wedding is over. Please, enjoy the food and the bar. It's all paid for. Don't let it go to waste. Then Emma walked out of the ballroom, Rachel close behind her, leaving her fairy tale in pieces on the floor. The next few weeks were a blur of lawyers, annulments, and well-meaning friends who didn't know what to say. Emma moved back in with her father temporarily, unable to face the apartment she'd shared with Michael. Everything there was contaminated with lies. The couch where they'd planned their future. The bed where he'd held her after her mother died. The kitchen table where he'd proposed their honeymoon to Bali. All of it had been built on a foundation of deception. Emma couldn't eat, couldn't sleep, couldn't stop wondering what was real and what had been performance. Had he ever loved her? Had any moment they shared been genuine? Or had she been nothing more than a convenient second act in his double life? You need to talk to someone, Rachel insisted one afternoon, finding Emma still in pajamas at 2 o'clock. A therapist, anyone. You can't keep doing this to yourself. What's the point? Emma asked dully. My entire relationship was a lie. I was going to spend my life with him, have children with him. And he already had a child he hid from me for 3 years. He's a monster for what he did, Rachel said fiercely. But you're not. You're amazing, Emma. You deserve so much. Better than this. But Emma couldn't believe that. She felt stupid, gullible, naive. How had she not known? What signs had she missed? She replayed every moment of their relationship, searching for clues she'd overlooked. The weekends he claimed to be at business conferences, the times his phone would ring and he'd step outside to answer, the way he'd sometimes seem distant, distracted, like his mind was somewhere else, with someone else, with his son. About a month after the wedding, Emma's doorbell rang. She opened it to find Sophie standing there, looking nervous. I hope it's okay that I came, Sophie said. Your father gave me your address. I wanted to check on you. Emma stared at her. This woman who'd blown up her life, even though Emma knew Sophie was as much a victim as she was. Come in, she finally said. They sat in her father's living room, an awkward silence stretching between them. Finally, Sophie spoke. I broke up with him, she said. After that night, I told him I never wanted to see him again. Good, Emma said. But James keeps asking about him. He doesn't understand why Daddy doesn't come home anymore. Sophie's voice broke. He cries at night. He thinks he did something wrong. Emma's heart clenched. That little boy was innocent in all this. I'm sorry, she said. That's not fair to him. None of this is fair, Sophie said. Not to you, not to me, not to James. Michael destroyed 3 lives because he was too selfish to choose one. Did you love him? Emma asked. Sophie nodded slowly. I did. I really did. He was good to us mostly. He'd take James to the park, help him with his homework. He'd hold me at night and tell me stories about his childhood. I thought we were building a life together. I thought he was just waiting for the right moment to propose. She laughed bitterly. I guess he was waiting, just not for me. I thought I knew him, Emma admitted. I thought he was this kind, honest, devoted man. I never would have guessed he was capable of something like this. That's what makes it worse, isn't it? Sophie said. It's not like he was obviously a bad person. He was good at compartmentalizing, good at making each of us feel special and loved. That takes a certain kind of skill. They sat in silence for a moment, 2 women united by betrayal. I know this might sound crazy, Sophie said hesitantly, but would you want to get coffee sometime? I don't have many friends in this city, and you're the only person who understands what this feels like. Emma looked at her, really looked at her, and saw her own pain reflected back. Sophie hadn't asked for this either. She was just trying to survive, to raise her son, to make sense of the wreckage. Okay, Emma said. Coffee sounds good. Over the next several months, Emma and Sophie formed an unlikely friendship. They'd meet for coffee every couple of weeks, sometimes talking about Michael, sometimes deliberately avoiding the subject. Sophie shared stories about James, his first day of kindergarten, his obsession with dinosaurs, his habit of singing in the bathtub. Emma talked about her mother, her job as a graphic designer, her fear that she'd never trust anyone again. "Do you think you'll ever date again?" Sophie asked one afternoon. Emma stirred her latte thoughtfully. "I don't know. The thought of opening myself up to someone terrifies me. What if I miss the signs again? What if I'm a terrible judge of character?" "You're not," Sophie said firmly. "He was just a really good liar. That's on him, not you." "Rachel keeps trying to set me up with her cousin," Emma admitted, "but I'm not ready." "Take your time," Sophie said. "There's no rush to trust again. Heal first." Through their conversations, Emma began to realize something important. She hadn't lost just Michael at that wedding reception. She'd lost her innocence, her ability to trust easily, her belief that people were fundamentally good. But she'd also gained something: clarity. She'd gained the truth, painful as it was, and she'd gained a strange, unexpected friendship with someone who understood her pain in a way no one else could. 6 months after the wedding, Emma enrolled in therapy. Her therapist, Dr. Martinez, was patient and kind, helping Emma work through the trauma and betrayal. "You're blaming yourself," Dr. Martinez observed during one session. "But let me ask you this. If you'd discovered the truth before the wedding, what would you have done?" "I would have left immediately," Emma said without hesitation. "Exactly. You would have made the right choice given the right information. He denied you that information. He controlled the narrative. That's not your failure, that's his manipulation." "But I should have known," Emma insisted. "There must have been signs." "Or," Dr. Martinez said gently, "he was just very good at hiding. Sociopaths and narcissists often are. They construct elaborate lies and maintain them meticulously. Your trust wasn't a weakness, Emma. It was normal. It was healthy. He exploited that, and that's entirely on him." Slowly, painfully, Emma began to forgive herself. 1 year after the wedding that never was, Emma got a text from Sophie. "James's 6th birthday party is on Saturday. Would you want to come? He keeps talking about the nice lady who gave him a birthday present at the fancy party." Emma's first instinct was to say no. Being around James meant being reminded of Michael, of everything she'd lost. But then she thought about that little boy, innocent and sweet, who'd done nothing wrong. He'd lost his father, too, in a way. He deserved better. "I'll be there," Emma texted back. The party was at a local park filled with balloons and children running around with cake-smeared faces. James saw Emma and ran over, his dimpled smile bright. "You came," he shouted. "Mommy said you might come." Emma knelt down to his level. "Happy birthday, James. What's that you're holding?" "It's a T-Rex," he said, excitedly showing her a plastic dinosaur. "He's the king of the dinosaurs." "He's very cool," Emma said, feeling her heart warm despite herself. She spent the afternoon watching James play, helping Sophie serve cake, and chatting with the other parents. It felt normal. Healing, even. As the party wound down and children started leaving, Sophie pulled Emma aside. "Thank you for coming," she said. "It means a lot to both of us." "He's a great kid," Emma said honestly. "You're doing an amazing job with him." "I try," Sophie sighed. "It's hard doing it alone. Michael sends child support checks, but he hasn't asked to see James since that night. I think he's too ashamed." "Good," Emma said. "He should be." As Emma drove home that evening, she realized something had shifted. The pain was still there, it probably always would be in some form, but it no longer consumed her. She could think about Michael without feeling like she was drowning. She could see James without feeling bitter. She was healing. 2 years after the wedding, Emma met Daniel. He was an architect who'd hired her design firm to create branding for his new company. He was cautious, respectful, and refreshingly straightforward. When he asked her to dinner, Emma's first instinct was to decline. But Rachel's voice echoed in her head. "You can't let Michael steal your future along with your past." "Okay," Emma said, "but I need to tell you something first." She told Daniel everything over coffee. The wedding, the secret family, the betrayal, the healing. She watched his face carefully for signs of judgment or pity, but found only compassion. "That must have been devastating," Daniel said quietly. "But if it helps at all, his inability to be honest says everything about him and nothing about you." "I have trust issues now," Emma admitted. "I'm working on them, but they're there." That's understandable, Daniel said. Look, I'm not going to pressure you for anything. If you want to take things slow, we'll take things slow. If you want to vary,